What is up, my beautiful gemstones? Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, just welcome. My name is Gemma Jade, but today we are going to be discussing a haunting in a small town in Missouri. Welcome to the final part in my 7 Days of Halloween series, which reached a little hiccup when I got sick for a week and couldn't get out of bed last week, but I'm making it up to y'all and working really hard on Halloween to make sure all of the rest of the videos, the last 4, are getting out today and tonight for you guys. I was originally planning on ending this series with a string of strange happenings that all happened on Halloween night throughout history. But once I finished the script for that, I saw that it was pretty anticlimactic and nothing too scary or creepy had actually happened as far as what I could find with the time I had to put this video together, which wasn't much. So then I was looking like crazy for something to cover instead that wouldn't take too long. And that's when I came across a haunting in a small town in Missouri that I'd never heard of before. It happened in Blockout, Missouri, which I actually hadn't ever heard of until just now either, and I just thought it would be a great and creepy video to bring this series to an end until next year. Without anything else, let's jump right in. But before we do, I just want to say that this series, this video, and most of what I do here on this channel is brought to you guys by my members. Paranormal Pixie, Aunt Edna, Heather B, Vixen Doe, Divine Empathic Tarot, Cheeky Kiki, Alexander Unverhall, Diane Boss, Black Dragon, The Bat Mom, Multifaceted Jules, Kelly Lewis, Let the Monsters In with Ryan Tremblay, Chris Jarvis, Mama Cindy Lee, Jared Crazy Indian, Life with Bobby, Slow Motion, Gary Reed, Hurricane Holly, Blue Crossroads, KC, Val SWPA, Nutslap, Wendy Williams, Ghost Dragon CW, not in any particular order. That's just the order they appear in my YouTube studio when I look up my members. Now, with all that being said, we can jump right in. I want to start off with a quote from MU because the way they set the tone for what we're about to go through is better than anything I'm able to say at this point. My head's still very clouded, and as you can probably tell, I'm still kind of nasally. They said, quote, "A long, winding gray asphalt road splits from a rural highway 30-some miles north of St. Joseph, Missouri, and runs between brown winter farm fields in a scattering of trees before it enters the tiny town of Blockout, Missouri." And I think I said Blockout in the beginning, sorry. "A weathered sign welcoming visitors stands at the city limits. To some, the welcome ends there. This hilly town with its curbless streets, long dark business fronts, and many houses with grand days decade past, hides something sinister." End quote. In 2008, Tammin and Tony Morell bought a house in Balcow. They signed the papers on Christmas Eve and moved in the very next day on Christmas Day. They seemingly knew what they were getting into, or at least they thought they did, as Tammin would later say, quote, "When we bought the house, it was known as the old haunted house," end quote. From the very first day they lived there, the house was seemingly very strange. One of the first things they noticed that somewhat creeped them out was that the previous owners had never really moved out. I mean, they left, but they must have only taken the clothing on their backs because all of their stuff was left behind, and it was all right where it looked like they'd left it, where it should have been. It wasn't even packed in boxes or anything, and it was fairly obvious that whoever had lived there before had left in an extreme hurry. Pictures hung from nails on the walls, furniture sat where it looked like it had been for years, it was dusty, and even some dirty socks laid on the bathroom floor in the corner. It was bizarre to say the least. Tammin said, quote, "It was spooky. The table was made. There was food in the refrigerator. Their clothes were in the drawers. They just left," end quote. The Morells were able to buy the house after foreclosure. It was a beautiful, rustic-looking old home. It had 4 bedrooms and was 2 stories high. Tammin later found out that the reason the home was able to be bought so cheap and at such a bargain was because there had been almost no other prospective buyers. She said, quote, "I got it really cheap, but I didn't expect it to be like this," end quote. Tony was originally from Davenport, Ohio, and Tammin from St. Joseph, Missouri, nearby, and as they and Tammin's 2 children, Catherine and Jake, began carrying their boxes into the old home, they all began to feel very strange about the whole situation, and they all had very odd feelings about the place itself. Tammin explained, quote, "The first night I slept on the couch and I heard pots and pans rattling around, but we hadn't unpacked. We weren't using the kitchen," end quote. Tony heard something that night as well, but it wasn't pots and pans. He heard a voice and he said, quote, "It sounded like a kid crying," end quote. Tammin posted on Facebook on April 21st, 2011 at 8:42 a.m., quote, "Last night I was awakened by my son's voice calling, 'Mom,' yet he was sound asleep," end quote. After a strange first night, the family was relieved when they woke up the following morning to the delicious scents and smells of a fresh breakfast being cooked in the kitchen. The problem was the whole family was accounted for and no one was in the kitchen cooking anything. Tammin later said, quote, "It was weird, but there's always weird smells. Like death, too," end quote. I don't think she meant that the breakfast smelled like death, but that the family smells the death smell a lot around all areas of the home and have come to be used to it by the time she had said this. Indeed, the whole family started noticing that the odor of rotting flesh was prominent all over the house, but it never lingered and would come and go just long enough for them to get a whiff of it and be confused as to where it could be coming from before it was gone again. The decaying smell would appear in one area and slowly travel throughout the entire house before disappearing completely, sometimes returning right away within just a few hours, but mostly not returning again for a few weeks at a time. The smell continues to come and go in that house to this day, seemingly as it pleases. During their first month in the house, the strange occurrences quickly escalated. Doors would slam, not to mention the smells all over the place, the sounds of children's cries or laughter, disembodied children's voices, cabinets opening and then slamming shut again on their own, and even constant stomping footsteps. All of these things became common very quickly, and no one in the house knew what to do about any of it. They didn't know what to think about any of it either. The family agrees that the worst thing about the home was, quote, "the feeling," end quote, more so than anything else I just mentioned. Tony said, quote, "A lot of people say in a room upstairs they feel it, a depressing feeling," end quote. Tammin said about it, quote, "If I'm the only person here at night, I feel really depressed, almost frozen, like I can't breathe," end quote. On February 3rd, 2011, at 3:03 p.m., Tammin posted on Facebook, quote, "Life in Balcow, never a cell phone or internet signal, landlines down constantly, electricity blinking on and off sporadically, locals are reclusive and unfriendly, stories of strange disappearances and mutilated pets. Sounding like a horror movie yet?" End quote. The family says the atmosphere on the ground floor of the home in particular is thick and heavy, but Tony said that's also the atmosphere of the entire town of Balcow. He said, quote, "I'm the biggest skeptic in the house, and I've felt things here. This house is weird anyway. The whole town is weird. The first month we lived here, we only saw kids, no adults. Yeah, this town is weird," end quote. On March 20th, 2011, Tammin posted to Facebook, quote, "Driving down the road into town, heard raindrops hit the car, stuck our arms out and felt the cold stinging raindrops hit our hands and arms, smelled the rain, yet our hands and arms were dry when we pulled them back in the windows. There were no visible raindrops on the car. Weird place Balcow is," end quote. As the overall strangeness and odd activity in the house continued, thousands of flies infested an upstairs room, and the day after they were finally able to get rid of all of them, just as many or more appeared on the front porch. It wasn't like they moved the flies from the upstairs room to the porch either. They were completely gone, and new ones came in and just infested a different spot in the house. Catherine said she had been woken up many times to what sounded like a bowling ball being rolled down the upstairs hallway outside of her bedroom, and the family's dog absolutely refuses to go near, let alone down into, the home's basement. Tammin has seen shadow figures wandering throughout the house, and all of these things started to become commonplace to the members of this family. They just became so used to it all, I guess because they didn't know what to do about it, but it got much worse when the house seemingly turned fully against them and the haunting became increasingly violent as more time passed. Tammin said, quote, "I got thrown down the stairs. It was morning time and I was not scared or anything. I was standing on the landing with my dog Chewy, and the next thing I knew I was halfway down the stairs bouncing and I wondered, what just happened?" End quote. With all of this going on, the family made the very smart decision to move back to St. Joseph. So Tammin said the reason for the move was mostly financial, but Tony disagreed and said it was due to all of the bizarre circumstances in the home that they had all somehow, very strangely, just gotten used to like it was normal or no big deal. The move back to St. Joseph started on Halloween, with Tony saying, quote, "We just didn't like being in this house," end quote. On April 10th, 2010 at 2:55 p.m., Tammin posted to Facebook, quote, "The previous family who owned the house was preoccupied with Christmas, and ironically, they moved in on Halloween, which is our favorite holiday. By the way, we moved in on Christmas Day. Coincidence? End quote. With a population of just 234 people, everyone in Balkow were basically neighbors, and it was said that the Morels' neighbors didn't like Halloween at all and didn't take kindly to people celebrating the holiday at all either. Tony said that when he and his family had volunteered to donate some Halloween decorations for the park in town, he was told, quote, "We don't celebrate Halloween here. We celebrate the fall harvest," end quote. The family decided that they were going to celebrate their favorite holiday together anyway and turned their home into an open haunted house as an attraction. They knew how the town felt about the holiday, and so they went to St. Joseph and handed out flyers inviting people to come to the haunted house on Halloween night. Tony was shocked at some of the responses he received when people in St. Joseph saw the address. Tammin said about it, quote, "When we handed out flyers in St. Joseph, one guy said, 'I know that house. It's in Balkow. It's evil,' end quote." Despite most locals in Balkow shunning the Halloween celebration put on by the Morels, some of them actually came to check it out, but didn't make things easier. Catherine said, quote, "When they were drunk, some kids went through, but their parents weren't supposed to know about it," end quote. Most of the guests that came that night came from out of town, and the house did not disappoint. The audio and music did basically whatever it felt like doing throughout the night, and even though the attic was still and not too much was happening up there, ornaments would fly across the room at people, seemingly coming from nowhere at all. The activity soon became dangerous, though, as Tammin said, quote, "There was a girl in my room and a window imploded," end quote. Catherine, who was there, saw the whole thing and said, quote, "She stepped back and it blew on her," end quote. Tammin would later say, quote, "I think it was a mistake to do the haunted house there," end quote. On April 12, 2010, at 5:51 p.m., Tammin wrote on Facebook, quote, "Today I was upstairs sorting some clothes in the closet and came out with scratches on my hands and arms," end quote. In November, the family went back to St. Joseph and left the creepy and obviously violently haunted house behind them. They didn't sell the house, though, and instead rented it to a man named Jim, who had been friends with Tony for a really long time. The house seemingly wasn't too happy about this change because it threw everything it had, or so it seemed, at the new renters. Tammin said, quote, "They changed so much. They changed when they lived there," end quote. Jim had moved in with his girlfriend, 2 teenage boys, and a 10-year-old girl, and it said that they immediately felt the weight of the house on them. Catherine said, quote, "The little girl said she came to our house to talk to the ghosts," end quote. With our house, in this situation being the house the girl's family was renting from Catherine's family, from her parents. One day, Jim and his family simply were not there anymore. Tammin said, quote, "They left their clothes here, they left their cell phones," end quote. Catherine added, quote, "There was food in the fridge," end quote. Disgustingly, they left some other things behind as well. Jim and his family left buckets of grease and urine all over the house. Despite the fact that they rented it to one of Tony's close friends, they never saw or heard from him or his family ever again. Tammin and Tony didn't know what happened, but they knew that the house had something to do with whatever it was and felt the house had done something to the family. Tammin said, quote, "We didn't know where they went and they never came back for their stuff," end quote. So Tammin and Tony ended up moving back into the Balkow home not too long after their renters disappeared. On February 13th, 2010, Tammin posted on Facebook, quote, "This house has not lost its depressing, suffocating, oppressive feel. It's like the house sucks every bit of hope and happiness out of a person when they walk through the door," end quote. Tony said, quote, "Since we moved back in, I haven't been able to sleep well, and I can always sleep," end quote. Tammin responded, quote, "We all don't," end quote. As she was interviewed, Catherine sat on a chair in the kitchen with her head in her hands and said, quote, "I feel like someone is shaking me," end quote. Tammin finally explained that they had to move back into the Hell House due to, quote, "personal financial reasons and the crime rates in St. Joseph," end quote. She further explained, quote, "I thought, let's move back to Balkow and everything will be fine," end quote. It wasn't fine, guys, and the haunting continues to this day. I just want to say as a side note here, guys, I see this a lot where people move away from a haunted place and forget how horrible it all had been to begin with. It's like when you touch something hot and get burned, but then years later, while you can recall that you were hurt, that you were burned, you can't actually feel the pain of the burn all over again, not physically anyway. Plus, with some distance, it's much easier to imagine that you didn't really experience everything you thought you had. It's crazy, but it happens more often than you would ever think to believe. Anyway, Catherine told Tammin about a dream she had of a little girl who lives in the house, a spirit, or who she said had lived there in the dream, and the girl told her, quote, "The gray kitty is my favorite," end quote. That same morning, before she had heard about Catherine's dream, Tammin had been wondering how their little gray cat had been inexplicably locked in the living room all night and unable to get out, with no one hearing it cry or anything like that to alert them that it was stuck in there all night long. Tony said, quote, "My life has been nothing but insane since moving to Balcow," end quote. Tammin agreed and said, quote, "I feel like I'm in a movie," end quote. In the interest of keeping this one short, sweet, and to the point, because I have so much to prepare for to get this and another video out today to finish off this series, I've decided to end it there. I'm going to look further into this particular home, though, and see if there's been any new development since my source material did an investigation and got all of this information back in 2018. So stay tuned if you're interested in hearing more about this haunting in Balcow, Missouri. And I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, but it was spelled two different ways. I will say that this family is more than likely primed for or are already under demonic possession. I find it interesting that nothing was heard throughout the interviews I read with the family from the Morrill's son, Jake. Only their daughter Catherine seems to have participated in the interviews, and I have a feeling the son, despite being a teenager or older, could be the focus of the possession and whatever spirits lurk and linger in the home. Shadow people or shadow entities do not just hang around and lurk in happy homes and places full of spiritual light. They're dark entities, so even without everything else pointing to this being something really evil and terribly bad for this family, that would have been enough for me to be concerned from the very beginning. I also desperately need to know what happened to the other family and why the Morrills don't seem very concerned at the fact that this entire family, 5 people, disappeared while living in their home. Then again, possession or influence from evil or demonic entities will do that to people as well. Stay tuned and I'll let you all know what I find when I investigate further into this, which I will be doing as soon as possible because I cannot wait for more information. That's all I have for you today, guys. Please give this video a big thumbs up if you enjoyed the content, if you enjoyed this Halloween series, if you enjoyed spending this time with me. Spread the love by sharing this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. Make sure your notification bell is turned on. That is a huge component to making sure all of this work is that you get notified for the videos and that you share them with people you think would enjoy them. Check out the description box for some important links. If you think I should get paid for the work I do here on this channel, please consider donating. PayPal, Cash App, my Amazon wish list gift link. Also in the description box, you will find links to the Kindle, paperback, and Audible versions of all of my books. And if you can't find one that you're looking for, just go to Amazon and type in Gemma Jade Books and you will see my entire collection. For any correspondence with me to set up personal intuitive oracle readings, spiritual sessions, video readings, etc., to make any orders for any of the spiritual helper boxes or sprays or anything like that, if you just want information, I mean to send in your own encounter stories with the extraterrestrial, otherworldly, paranormal, supernatural, whatever you've experienced, any and all correspondence at GemmaJadeParanormal@gmail.com. Short, sweet, and to the point. Be kind to each other, guys. It doesn't cost anything. Be kind to yourselves and never accept anything less than others being kind to you. Please don't forget to go over on TikTok and follow me if you have TikTok or are willing to get it. I need to get 1,000 followers in order to really ramp up what I'm doing in the spiritual realm over here. I can do a lot more and make more money over on TikTok doing it. I will still keep the live intuitive oracle and everything I'm doing over here the same, except I'll be able to bring it to a higher degree and again get paid more without having to rely so much on you guys donating over here over on TikTok. I also have Instagram, which is mainly for work stuff, and then you can hit me up and find me, follow me on Facebook as well. Remember, guys, abundance is your birthright. So all you have to do is take the actionable steps behind your manifestations and move along in your life and in your dreams. Whatever you're not changing, you're choosing. And whether you can help it or not, that is still the simplest fact. I believe in you. I got your back. Always go in grace. Smile at a stranger. Happy, happy, happy Halloween. And I will see you guys next time.